Okay, we'll still wait till 1:30 on the clock, but we'll start then. Okay, by the clock, it's 1:30, so we are going to get started. I'll call us to order. And Mr. Westerson, if you'd like to start with a roll call, please.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Palladino.
Present.
Acting Mayor Parker.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Present.
Councillor Croson.
I'm here.
Thank you. Everyone's accounted for.
All right. Beginning then with our acknowledgement statement, the City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Moving right on, we will go to the adoption of the agenda. I have a motion from Councillor Palladino. Be it resolved that the agenda of the regular meeting of the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee of April 4th, 2023 be adopted as presented. Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask the City Clerk if there are any additions or deletions to the agenda.
There are none.
Option of the agenda.
Just one comment. I'm sorry, the date on it?
Oh, April 4th. Yes, you're right. We
Thank
are
you.
on the 6th today.
I won't move that then.
All right. So that's been moved with the amended date of the motion. Friendly amendment, because we can't change the fact that it is the 6th. All in favor? Perfect. Passes unanimously. Moving to the consent agenda, I have a motion from Acting Mayor Parker. Be it resolved that the minutes of Civic Works Standing Policy Committee held on March 2nd, 2023 be approved, and the Chair and City Clerk designate be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee receive as information the status of initiatives of 0406-2023. Acting Mayor Parker.
Call the question. Thank you.
Question's been called. All in favor? Excellent. So getting those out of the way, we move now into our 7 presentations, and we'll begin with the first, which is by Rory Wheat, Vice President, Development of Varme Energy, looking at a Varme Energy overview. Mr. Wheat, I believe you're online. I'm hoping everything is set up for you.
Hello. Yeah, I think we're good as long as everybody can hear us.
We can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Perfect. I'll just give a quick introduction for myself and then pass it along to our CEO, Sean Collins here, who will take through the presentation. Rory, I'm the VP of Development for Varme Energy. Background is in biology and then energy security, and have been working with Varme since our inception on the projects that we're developing in Alberta.
Hi, Sean Collins, CEO for Varme. Whole career's been in energy transition and renewable energy project development, and really appreciate the time with council today. We've got Samir Hamid, our waste manager, on, so maybe you want to say a quick hi, Samir.
Hey, thanks for having us, everyone. I'm Samir Hamid with Varme as well. I'm in charge of the waste. I'm the waste manager here.
We've got a presentation. We can screen share if that works easiest. I know I see it up on screen there, but maybe we can, just so we drive on our side, if that's okay. Do you want to hit share? Yeah. And just checking in, we had sort of short and sweet. We were going to take maybe 10 minutes for presentation and look for a Q&A from the group. Just wanted to check in that timing works okay on your side.
We were hoping you can stick closer to 5, but we understand if you go a little over.
Okay, we'll go quick. It's Thursday before a long weekend, so we'll stay. We'll try to stay pretty tight. Yeah, it was nice. We were down in community last week. We came to the South Crow conference in Lethbridge, so it was a great chance to. We met Jen on council and had a great chat with the group in the region. So quick overview for Varma Energy. We're clean energy project developers developing waste to energy assets with integrated carbon capture. So this sort of simple graphic is the very quick overview of diverting landfill-bound waste, processing it in a waste-to-energy facility to combust and extract the energy out, so deliver energy as power onto the grid or as steam into industrial facilities. And feature for us is integration of carbon capture and utilization or sequestration. We're majority owned out of Oslo, Norway, by a group called Green Transition Holdings that has developed a number of similar assets across Europe. I'll crank through this fairly quickly. In terms of environmental benefit, significant environmental benefit in you eliminate garbage from winding up at a landfill in the first place. It's 100-year environmental liabilities for the landfill, the waste that we put into landfills. And one of the largest sources of methane emissions in the country, on par with that of oil and gas and agriculture, is the waste we dispose in landfills. So for us, leverage a lot the proven track record of what's worked in Europe. They've gone from 55% of their waste going to landfills at the start of the millennium, down under 20% today. I'll crank through this fairly quickly in the interest of time. We leverage an existing gasification technology that's been built across facilities in 3 countries, in Norway, Germany, and the UK. About 1 million operating hours of the technology across built facilities to date. Big flexibility in the energy value. Can't control what shows up on a garbage truck day to day, so specifically designed around dealing with variable input waste streams. And so far have an active development portfolio, have a first project that we're aiming to get into construction by the end of the year in the Alberta Industrial Heartland, co-located with a large facility, also in development of additional project in Edmonton and in Innisfail region. I would say coming to council is we're quite keen to engage with Lethbridge about the possibility of developing a waste energy project in Lethbridge area. See the potential partnership opportunities between Varma and the city of Lethbridge as offering a landfill elimination solution, including some of your potentially difficult to abate agricultural streams. Do provide unique in the fact that we're preventing methane at the landfill and capturing all of our carbon. So the projects are technically carbon negative projects. Opportunity to provide carbon negative energy into the local industrial sector or onto the grid. Opportunity to get a pioneering position in the carbon capture industry. And our sort of short and sweet ask of council, we would be keen in exploring the business case for a waste to energy facility in the region. Ideally would like a formal assignment of time from your economic development group to sort of chase down if there's a business case for a waste to energy project in the region. After which if there is, we'd be keen to submit a proposal to the city of Lethbridge. So really coming here today to introduce ourselves. We know there's been a lot of leadership on the waste to energy front in the Lethbridge region. Would be keen to take that next step and see if there is the opportunity to develop a commercial opportunity in the region. And sort of initial ask is around a bit of time from your economic development group to work with Rory and myself and our development team to evaluate that. So I think we were fairly short and sweet. We'll maybe wrap there and happy to answer any questions about what we're doing or how we could see working with the city of Lethbridge.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, you were very much on time, so I thank you for that. We will be going to questions, but one thing I'll note right away is Lethbridge does not, the city itself does not do economic development. We work with economic development in Lethbridge. So I think we can just promise their time because we can't.
Okay.
But we will move to questions from council or from committee. Are there any questions that you would like to ask committee? Everybody's jumping up. One of the things, just to give you a sense, as I said, we can through staff introduce you to economic development in Lethbridge. I don't think that would be an issue, Mr. Sanchez, to make that connection.
Yes, my understanding is that they have already talked to EDL in this case. And there was a meeting or a presentation last week, and that's something they will be more than happy to do. We don't have any issues with them connecting with them in that regards.
Right, and then if they do connect, come up with a project, they could come back to council or committee at that time and present. The other thing that I just want to make sure that you understand is if we do move in this area, you're not the only group which has presented options to us. If we were to move in this area, we have to follow, of course, proper procurement, and we would put out an RFP or RFQ and let any of the groups know that who have come forward to us that that is the direction we are thinking of moving in and request proposals at that time. So just to give you a sense of how we work in the municipal government at this level, would that be something that you could work within?
Yeah, we've gone through similar process with the City of Edmonton. They just concluded an RFP process for waste to energy. We were part of the folks that precipitated to have there be a procurement process. So it's a very have different options. Some jurisdictions that aren't actively looking at this would welcome unsolicited proposal. Happy to work within the procurement requirements for Lethbridge for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I don't see any other questions, so we're going to go to our motion, which is to accept this as information, understanding that you will continue working with EDL if that is your choice, because again, we can't direct anybody at that level. And if we see a project come back, we'll know things have progressed.
Sure.
So
yeah, maybe one quick comment. We've had just preliminary chat with Mandy Parker on your solid waste group. Some information and data does feel like it's within the city proper. But we're keen to continue connecting with EDL and sort of getting a better understanding of the waste realities within Lethbridge.
Perfect. So we will then move to a motion. I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope. Be it resolved, the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommends Council receive the Varma Energy Overview as information at this time. Deputy Mayor.
I'm not sure that there would be any debate on this, so I'll certainly just call. Any questions at all from anyone? None? Okay, then I'll call the question.
I've always thought once you heard a project, how can you not accept it as information? You've heard it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Closure.
So vote is called. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you again, Mr. Wheat and your team for your presentation, and look forward to seeing where it progresses in the future.
Okay, really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 4.2. We have now a presentation from Ms. Shepherd, the Executive Director of Environment Lethbridge, on Environment Lethbridge's 2022-2023 report on activities. Ms. Shepherd, are you a time traveler? You're already going to tell us what you've done in 2023?
Well, just a little bit of 2023.
Well, welcome, and we'd love to hear your presentation.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for having me here today to present our report on activities for the past year and a little bit. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of background, and I did include a copy of our current strategic plan in your package. We currently have 4 strategic priorities: community collaboration, learning and action, engagement with local government, and operational stability. And combined with that, we have 3 focus areas that we're working on, which are waste reduction, green energy, and climate resilience. Next slide, please. So for 2022, we have a number of key performance indicators that we track. And this is a bit of a snapshot of some of the highlights for 2022. Certainly the first half of this year, we were still coming out of COVID. So some of our numbers, such as outreach to local businesses, we hope to see higher numbers going forward in 2023. But I would draw your attention to the contributions to MDP policies. We have identified 12 areas where we can help the city achieve benchmarks in this regard, and in 2022 we were able to make progress towards 9 of those. Next slide, please. Just some program highlights for you. Reuse Rendezvous, which I know you're all familiar with, continues to be one of our most popular programs. Our most recent version was in September of 2022. We had just under 350 households participate, and just under 3,000 people visit the online map, which is usually our metric as to how many people are going out and taking items. We also have our Wasteless website, which promotes waste reduction, particularly around food and textile waste. We get about 2,500, so we get about 200 visitors a month to that site. But visitors that go to that site spend about 4 minutes on the site, which is a pretty significant amount of time for a web resource. And our new project is the Living Cities Project. We're partnered with Green Communities Canada, which is a national organization, as well as the Dillon School of Business at the University of Lethbridge to work with some youth and have them do some green infrastructure demonstration projects in Lethbridge. Next slide, please. On the collaboration side, as I mentioned, we are collaborating with Green Communities Canada. We've also launched an initiative to bring together some of our local organizations to increase local collaboration in what we're calling the Lethbridge Urban Nature and Environment Roundtable. And this is an opportunity for all of us who are working together already, but to sort of be more in the know on what particular projects people are working on. And then stepping a little bit outside the environment portfolio, I spent a 4-year term on the Board of Economic Development as the environment rep, which wrapped in April of 2022. Next slide, please. We do quite a lot of work with city staff across a number of different departments, particularly waste and recycling and the corporate sustainability team. We were also able to support the launch of the Clean Energy Improvement Program, which is a huge success for Lethbridge, I think, by any metric. And then we also provide input to consultations on a number of different planning initiatives. Next slide, please. Just looking at some of our financial information, this is for our current fiscal year because our fiscal years don't quite line up with the cities very well. Just looking at our revenue sources, our revenue from the city will comprise about 1/3 of our overall revenue for this year. We're currently leveraging at $1 city dollar to every $1.91 of external funding. That our year is not done. It ends at the end of July, so we expect that to increase a little bit as well. Next slide, please. And just looking forward to the future, these are our priorities moving forward. We're continuing on Living Cities and the demonstration green infrastructure sites. Our core programs of Reuse Rendezvous, CD Saturday, Wasteless, Environment Week, we continue those on an annual basis. One of our priorities is engagement with local businesses. We were doing some work in this regard prior to the pandemic, and we'd like to pick that back up again. Continuing to support the priorities in the municipal development plan, and then building in diversity and inclusion into our internal policies and practices is a big priority for us going forward. Next slide. And I think that's it for me, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shepherd, for the presentation. We will first, and I apologize to the audience. I'm under the understanding many of you are here for the dogs, but at each time I should ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak. So if there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on Environment Lethbridge, you would have the opportunity at this point. Nobody's rushing the podium, though, so I will hold to my assumption that most are here for the off-leash dog parks. So are there any questions from committee for Ms. Shepherd? Just because you have 7 presentations doesn't mean you have to skip questions, guys. All right. Ms. Shepherd, with your work on the municipal development plan, can you talk about some of the priority areas that you're helping the city of Lethbridge move ahead?
Sure. Let me just flip to that page in the report. So I won't go through them all. There are a dozen of them, but kind of the main theme areas would be things like renewable energy and energy efficiency, community gardens and local food, waste reduction and water conservation, and then more broadly in terms of promoting understanding of the environment and collaborating around environmental issues.
So in a way, you're an external organization that provides advice and information for a city to move ahead so that if we don't have inside experts, you're providing it. How is the relationship going between you and the city? Is it working well?
I guess I can only speak from my perspective, of course. But yeah, I think we have a really good relationship. I meet with staff from corporate sustainability at least monthly, and usually more often than that. We have a liaison from that team who attends our board meetings as well. So I have some really good connections there. And then less regular but still ongoing contact with other departments like parks and planning and those teams as well.
So they know you're there and that you can provide the information.
Absolutely.
We'll move to more questions. Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Chair. To the presenter, thank you very much for the presentation. Just a question in regards to relationship building with areas of the corporation. I'm wondering if there is an opportunity there for you to bring forward examples of indigenous plants, grasses, and other flora, fauna, trees, and so forth that would be resilient, particularly as weather patterns are transitioning to a more drier climate. Are you in a position to be able to assist and provide perhaps even advice and or counsel to areas of the corporation as we try to incorporate more of those types of plant life into our cityscape?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to have those conversations, and certainly have talked with, for example, some of the urban forestry team about some of the work they're doing, and I know they have incorporated some of that into the new urban forestry master plan. But yeah, I'd be happy to assist with that for sure. Yeah.
All right, Councillor Palladino.
Thank you. What is the Living Cities project?
So the Living Cities project is a project that we're doing in collaboration with a national organization called Green Communities Canada. And basically they selected 5 communities and organizations across the country as pilot communities, and we were lucky enough to be one of those. And through that project, we basically developed a series of potential policy proposals along with communications tools to highlight the importance of green infrastructure in local communities. From that, we spun out a project that is partnering with the University of Lethbridge to get youth engaged. And that project basically allows youth to take the lead on doing the project development to get some green infrastructure demonstration sites installed in the city. So the youth, with our guidance, of course, are doing the project planning, the site selection, the budgeting, the volunteer recruitment, and then ultimately the implementation of those sites.
An example of the demonstration site?
Yeah, so we're still, we haven't finalized the site selections exactly at this point, but it could be anything from expanding the Pollinator Cafe project to doing some de-paving projects. We've also looked at, the city has installed some floating islands in some of the storm ponds, so whether there's an opportunity to expand some of those types of projects, that kind of thing. Yeah.
One final question that I have is, you're a membership-based organization as well. How's your memberships going?
Our memberships have declined a little bit over the past couple of years. I think in part because over COVID, we weren't able to do events and things like that as frequently as before. So now that that work is picking up again, I'm hoping we'll see an increase there for sure.
Not an easy time right now for not-for-profits in various ways, which is why I ask, because I don't think you're alone in that in any way.
I'm confident in that as well, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Shepherd. We have no more questions in the queue, so we'll move to the motion if you want to have a seat.
Great, thank you very much.
As you might be completely surprised today, it's for information. But this is from Councillor Palladino. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee receive the Environment Lethbridge 2022-2023 report on activities as information. Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Shepherd, for the report on your current activities and also your KPIs and strategic plan. A good presentation, but if there are no further questions or comments, I will call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Passes unanimously. We are getting very informed today. But now we move on to something a little bit different. We have Mr. Blair Richter, General Manager of Parks and Cemeteries, on off-leash parks Phase 2 survey results. Mr. Richter, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, members of the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee. Let's just go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so a bit about why we're here today. In phase 2, the community survey went out and there were 6 proposed locations being considered as potential off-leash parks with different design concepts to help residents provide their feedback on locations, sizes, and even potential cost to build these parks. The 6 locations in question were Coalbanks Park and Nicholas Sharon Park on the west side, Henderson Park at 20th Avenue Green Strip on the south side, Kodiak Park at 28th Street North from 7th to 9th Avenue on the north side. Next slide, please. So a bit of a recap on how we got here. Back in Q4 of 2021, an official business resolution was passed by City Council to direct administration to bring back options to add smaller, accessible off-leash parks in existing parks and green spaces. Administration began researching best practices, identifying potential sites, and presented this 4-stage process to Civic Works SPC in Q1 of 2022. In Q2 of 2022, a survey went out to the public on the city's Get Involved website. From that initial survey, based on the results, 6 potential sites were identified based on a combination of community feedback and administration scoring of the different locations. Those results and next steps were presented to Civic Works SPC in Q4 of 2022. Next slide, please. In January 2023, a second survey was open to the public on the city's Get Involved website. We also mailed letters out to residents living within 100 meters of each of the proposed locations to make sure they were aware of the proposed parks being planned. And we also engaged with citizens at the community conversation event at the NMAC Center on January 18th. Next slide, please. So this slide is a bit of a summary on the results that we received from that second round of public engagement. One of the main things we wanted to consider in this survey was really trying to identify people that lived within that 100-meter radius and those that didn't. As you can see on the slide, we had a total of 1,118 responses to the survey. 806 of those identified as living within those 2 blocks of a potential location. You can see on the screen the comparison of people who are in favor and not in favor. And the column in blue is based on people who actually live within 2 blocks, and the column in yellow on the right is people that do not live within 2 blocks of a location. And then lastly, the sentiment summary at the bottom. It's really a tool in our Get Involved website that based on a written comment in the survey, it actually identifies the feeling from that comment, whether it's negative, mixed, neutral, and positive. Next slide, please. So items for consideration moving forward. Obviously, we had very mixed feedback from the public, which makes it challenging to identify locations for an off-leash park within existing spaces. Many prefer not to add off-leash areas to existing parks. There's obviously a cost to build and maintain these additional parks. We actually received a lot of feedback from residents wanting us to actually invest in our existing dog parks and enhance those. And lastly, there's potential pressure on our community animal services to enforce these spaces. So, next slide, please. So the recommendation here, so based on the community feedback and the considerations just mentioned, administration is recommending to adjust the approach from existing parks and really start exploring these as new parks are developed. We can also work with our Opportunity Lethbridge team and try to identify unused spaces that might work for potential dog parks that are not so close in proximity to existing residences, similar to the new Park and Bark that was open last year. Next slide, please. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richter. Just so the public is aware before you come up to speak, the motion we have to discuss is based on the recommendation that's coming from administration. That can, of course, be changed by any member of council with amendments, et cetera. But the motion that we are going to be looking at after we've heard from everybody is that. So just so that you're aware where we're heading in the conversation. We do now move to the public portion. As I said, my understanding is that is why we have so many members of the public, which is awesome here today. And we have one person who has signed up, so we will begin there and then go to anyone else who wishes to speak. So the first person on my list is Anthony Gomez, North Parkside Drive Community Association, who would like to speak. Mr. Gomez, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. I guess we may be playing into your general direction anyway, but our group felt we wanted to speak. So thanks for the opportunity to speak to this issue of the new off-leash dog parks in Lethbridge. My name's Tony Gomes. I'm here representing the Parkside Drive Community Association. We as a group recognize that we have the privilege of living next to Lethbridge's busy and iconic Henderson Lake Park. We also understand the need for off-leash dog parks, and as many of us are dog users, dog owners, we are already very happy with the present options for large off-leash dog parks where our pets can have a taste of freedom. We do, however, wish to express our specific and some general concerns regarding the proposal for an off-leash dog park within Henderson Lake Park. Many of these concerns are not actually unique to just our location. Some of our specific concerns are obvious and include parking issues and an increase in traffic related to the proposed park. Henderson Lake Park and the exhibition are both extremely busy during the spring, summer, and fall, and parking is already at a premium in this area. A new off-leash dog park will exacerbate this. Potential dog run users will find it difficult to park during peak times and holidays, particularly during events, on weekends and evenings. Congested parking and traffic will potentially present a safety hazard for pedestrians and children. We're concerned about the ability of the city to maintain a clean, safe area, particularly so close to children's playgrounds and picnic areas. A chain link fence around the area will be difficult to keep clean in our southern Alberta winds, and the turf destruction and dog excrement will be an ongoing problem for city workers, residents, and park goers. It's likely that irrigation of the area will need to be modified to maintain the turf with the expected heavy dog traffic in this very small area, lest it turn into a mud pit. This lack of water and dog traffic will potentially endanger the survival of many mature trees in this northeast corner of the park. Examining the potential plans for Henderson Lake off-leash dog run, we estimate up to 44 mature trees are at risk of damage or may eventually require removal, including a rare grove of ponderosa pine that is over 100 years old. Henderson Lake Park is without a doubt one of the most heavily utilized parks in Lethbridge. It hosts, as you know, many cultural and city-sanctioned events, which occupy the entire area of the park north of the lake. Examples, of course, include dragon boat races, Canada Day, fundraising walks and runs almost every weekend, as well as many practices and exhibitions by outdoor music and performance groups on many evenings during the week. Henderson Lake Park also serves as an accessible, low-cost option for family and cultural groups to meet and enjoy the outdoors without leaving the city. Church, cultural, family, and ethnic groups regularly use the Kiwanis and Gunnery Point picnic shelters and adjacent grassy areas for group dinners, sports, and activities that last the whole day and attract large numbers of participants to the northeast corner of the park. The grassy areas in the northeast are the only ones in the park suitable for sports such as soccer, cricket, believe it or not, people play cricket in Lethbridge, and volleyball. The proposed dog parks are directly adjacent to both of these picnic shelters, as well as Gunnery Point Playground, and barbecues and food preparation areas. In fact, based on the drawings, it appears that the barbecues would have to be removed to accommodate some of the plans for the dog run. It's also worthwhile to note that the potential dog park is adjacent to the outdoor patio and viewing area of the new Lethbridge Exhibition Agri-Food Hub. Our group is of the opinion that constructing an off-leash dog run in Henderson Lake Park will not only negatively impact local residents, but even more significantly will displace many other Lethbridge citizens that use Henderson Lake Park regularly, some of whom do not have access to other options for recreation due to their socioeconomic conditions. It stands to reason to us that developing dog parks should not subtract valuable park acreage from areas that are currently used heavily by Lethbridge residents. Fundamentally and generally, we believe that locating dog parks in established, already highly utilized human recreational areas is not in the best interests of most Lethbridge citizens. It should be possible to plan off-leash areas that minimally impact citizen access to low-cost recreational activities. The city has proven that this is possible with the large dog parks that already exist, particularly in the River Valley and Coolies, and we trust the city administration will continue to plan with the majority of Lethbridge residents' needs in mind. Once again, thanks for the opportunity to speak to this issue today, and we'd be happy to provide any other input you might require.
Well, thank you for coming down and sharing your input. If you'd like to have a seat, we'll see if there's anyone else. So now it's open to anyone from the audience who wishes to speak. If you do wish to speak, you can come forward, provide your name, because Mr. Westerson needs to make sure that's down for the minutes, and if you have anything you wish to say. All right. We will then move to questions from committee if there are any questions. I'm seeing my board completely lit up, guys. Okay, so there are no questions. Thank you, Mr. Richter. Must have been completely well explained because I have no questions from anybody on the committee. So we'll move then to the motion, which is coming from Acting Mayor Parker. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommends that Council, based on the engagement results, direct administration through the city manager to explore opportunities for additional off-leash dog parks in new outline plans or when amendments occur to existing outline plans, and to work with Opportunity Lethbridge to identify city-owned underutilized land that may be appropriate. Acting Mayor Parker, the motion is yours.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I want to thank our administration for the work that they did. And I'm proud in owning this resolution because I'm the one that also brought the idea forward in November. And I never realized it was going to be taken to this extent in regards to what was being presented to the community and and I appreciate that. I think a lot of misinformation was presented out there in the community, and I think that was based on a lot of people thought there was going to be dog parks the size of Nicholas Sheridan Park going up. I was thinking at the time that maybe the odd dog park the size of this council chamber could be put up in Nicholas Sheridan or in certain areas, just so people had a little side area. But obviously, people didn't want it. There was a lot of negative feedback, and it's incumbent upon myself to also recognize the pushback. And I think the recommendation that's being brought forward here takes in all the engagement that's occurred, and I want to thank Mr. Richter for all the hard work that he did. And it also shows us that we're accountable to what the community wanted, and we were listening loud and clear. And I know that when we had that open house at the NMAX, I think Mr. Richter's station was probably the most busiest, and I took the most questions in regards to the resolution, and I take ownership of it because I wanted to at least create the conversation. But it's important that we're accountable to the community and listening to what their response has been. So I believe this is a good philosophy, and I really like the idea that we're going to invest in our existing dog parks to improve what we have there in place. I know we do have some turf issues, and so you don't learn until you try, and I think this is a good process. So I'm proud of what's here, and I want to thank the community for all the feedback, both positive and negative, over the last few months, if not the last year, in regards to these proposals. So I would ask for my colleagues to support this.
All right, we have Councillor Palladino next in the queue for comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Richter, how are you today? Thank you for your very thorough report on the dog park issue. I see a lot of background work has taken place, and in the form of research and surveys and targeted engagement, et cetera. And you've managed to distill this down to 3 options, one of which is the recommended option, option 1, which is to focus on locations for dog parks early in the planning stage. For example, the outline plan stage, and not build in existing parks and green spaces. This way, future homeowners and builders will know in advance where they can be located or propose to be located. So I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Palladino. I just think historically, if you want people to come to meetings, talk about dogs, cats, or garbage, because then you will fill a room every time. So I think we should just add that to every one of our agendas so that we actually have an audience when we have presentations. But I'd just like to echo everybody else. Thank you, Mr. Richter, and to your team for the work that went into this. We know how much our community loves our parks and how much they want to ensure that our parks continue to be a place where the community can go to. And your willingness to engage with the community is very well demonstrated in this work. So it's good to know that we have such, well done public engagement out there. but we'll turn it over to Acting Mayor Parker to call the question.
And just before I call the question, and when you look at the opportunity in existing or outline plans, I think the west side Riverstone Dog Park is the perfect example of that. We designated that land as a future area for a dog park. The homeowners who were building that area knew what was going to occur, and it's been a success. So if we can piggyback on those successes, but at the same time, the process is good because the community can trust that their voices were heard and we took action, and I think a majority of the people would be happy with this resolution in front of us, so I'd call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Richter. We move now to James Nichols, Collections Manager, on the Waste and Recycling Curbside Organics Update. I know we've been doing a lot of work to inform the public of when the green carts are coming and when this is starting, so we thought, why not give you one more opportunity to talk to the public about this? So, Mr. Nichols, the floor is yours.
All right. Good afternoon, members of the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee. The intent of today's presentation is to provide the members of the committee an update on the Curbside Organics project to date, as well as to discuss several major milestones we are about to reach in the next several months. Next slide, please. Some specific areas for discussion will be our education and outreach efforts, some information on the collection of organic material in our Phase 1 areas, our upcoming green cart rollout for our remaining curbside customers, and a quick summary of our other efforts towards collecting and processing organic material here in the city. Next slide, please. So first off, I'd like to provide some information on the substantial education and outreach efforts that have been undertaken by the members of the team. This collaborative approach, with work from both our corporate communications team as well as the department's education and outreach team, began early. Starting with best practice information, including lessons learned from some of the 80% of similar-sized municipalities with a food and yard waste curbside program already in place, the team has continued to build a set of resources to help residents learn about and prepare for curbside organics. So some of those specific action items are development of website content, provision of information sessions, such as the aforementioned community conversations event. I'd like to say I was probably as busy as the dog park, just saying. An e-newsletter for our Phase 1 residents, participants, and an extensive marketing and advertising campaign in anticipation of Phase 2. Next slide, please. So our education and outreach team has also reached out to the Phase 1 participants to get their thoughts on the program so far. And as you can see with the slide here, 73% of those respondents saw a reduction in their black cart waste, and 79.6% of those felt that the organics program was a positive aspect of the community. Next slide, please. In addition to that, the team has also worked hard to create a comprehensive user guide for curbside organics households. This was provided to each of the households who participated in our Phase 1 collection areas and has been expanded and further improved prior to the start of Phase 2. It also has QR codes and website links that residents can use to access this information online or through the Lethbridge Loop mobile app. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. So before moving on to the plans for the citywide cart rollout coming up shortly, I wanted to speak to the results we've seen from Phase 1 so far. Phase 1 consisted of about 1,900 households located in the Legacy Ridge and Hardyville areas on the north side and the Varsity Village neighborhood on the west side. We were pleased to see the level of diversion that was achieved in this area, as well as the low 2% contamination rate in the green cart. We also identified some action items for Phase 2, like the need to further educate on plastic items not being accepted in the green cart, or greater opportunities for food waste diversion. Next slide, please. I'm a little biased, but now the exciting part. We are just about to start the distribution of green carts to all remaining households who currently receive curbside, blue, and black cart collection. The first distribution crews will be hitting the streets next Tuesday, April 11th, and will be making their way across the city over the next 5 weeks. Residents can expect to receive a 240-liter green cart. I was going to bring one, but I thought it might be a little much. They'll also receive an 8-liter kitchen pail, this one right here, and within there, they'll also receive a user guide. So again, they'll have a paper user guide that'll explain all aspects of the program. Once cart distribution is completed, we will start weekly collection of green carts on the week of May 16th. This weekly collection will continue until the end of October, at which time we will move to bi-weekly collection through the late fall and winter months. And as carts are delivered to residents and collection begins, residents will also begin to see the $5 per month organics collection charge applied to their utility bill. One final item I'd like to note is that locations with existing garbage and recycling that is collected communally, such as apartments and condominiums, will be implemented on a property-by-property basis, starting in the fall of this year. Next slide, please. So, facility update. The construction of the new organics processing facility has been moving along well. The facility has been completed on budget, even with some of the persistent supply chain issues that have dogged most industries through this project. The operating contractor, AIM Environmental, is in place, and the facility is already accepting ICI and Phase 1 residential organic material. The site is also fully prepared for the additional material that will be coming from citywide curbside rollout shortly. Next slide, please. So in summary, the Curbside Organics program has or is about to achieve several major milestones in the project. Our team of waste management professionals has worked hard to reach this point, and we are excited to continue forward in our waste diversion journey. The removal of organic material from residential garbage carts will allow our city to almost certainly achieve our 2021 waste diversion target, as well as set us up for success for that later 2030 target. It also furthers the city's goal to enhance and sustain the natural environment, moving our community towards a more sustainable future. So thank you for your time, and I'd welcome any questions the committee may have.
Thank you very much. We'll move to see if there's anyone from the public, and then we'll move into questions. So is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this matter? You are welcome to come up to the podium and to give your opinion or your information. Not seeing anyone, we'll move into questions from committee. Are there any questions from the committee? Okay, Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Just one. I noticed on one of the slides there you identified ICI. In French, that's ici. It's also icky. So I'm just wondering if there was some play on words there. Perhaps you can tell us what ICI is.
Basically waste that's coming from non-residential sources other than construction and demolition. So it stands for industrial, commercial, and institutional.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Great.
But their garbage is also icky.
It is.
Garbage is icky.
Good. Well, good luck with the rollout.
The one thing I didn't notice in any of your information is because we're seeing a reduction in black cart use in some communities, there may be several people who want to reduce from the large black cart they've had to a smaller one, thus having some money savings as well. How do people go about doing that?
What we're recommending for residents is to just try and use the cart for a little bit of time here. We can understand that there might be some size constraints, especially as it first shows up at their residence. Try it out. See if you can make it through a few seasons before you make a final decision on whether you want to reduce the size of your garbage cart. But if they want to make that decision after June 1st, once the rollout is completed, they can contact 311 and we'll work with them to do a cart exchange free of charge.
And how much is, if they go from the large black cart to the smaller one, how much would they be saving a month?
So you're looking at about $1.70.
So that would cut the $5 to $3.30
That's correct.
if you are reducing your waste enough that you can go to a smaller cart.
That is correct.
Yeah. Everybody wants to save some money. What about what size? The reduction in size. If you go to the smaller black cart, you save that money each month.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking in terms of volume, putting it into my garage. So you're going to a smaller unit. I think that's the single size that we currently have. We have 3 sizes of garbage cans, correct?
We have 2 actually, just 2. Yeah, so we have
big
360 liter, which is the vast majority of people in the city of Lethbridge have a 360 liter garbage cart. And then we have the smaller 240 liter cart, which is the standard size that's being given to all residents for green.
Okay.
Yeah, so about a third reduction if they were to go from the larger cart to the smaller cart.
Now, because I know it's ongoing, but if this doesn't happen, they'll be here in front of us. Our conversation's still ongoing with condos and apartments to make sure it effectively works for them.
Yeah, we have been talking consistently with the apartments and condominiums. We try and work with the property managers to start with, and then we meet with those condo boards on site, go to the meetings, the board meetings. So yeah, conversations have already started and are ongoing well in advance of our fall 2023. And again, those larger units, we're not going to be looking at those until spring of 2024. So even with fall 2023, we're starting with the smaller, under 45s, and then working our way up to the more complex units.
We're making it work so it works for each business. Okay,
We
perfect.
appreciate there's that individualized attention that's required for these residences, and so we're taking a little bit more time for that.
Okay. Councillor Palladino?
Did I read somewhere that you don't have, you can opt out of the card, but you still pay the $5 fee?
That is correct. As a community initiative, we hope that everybody tries the card out, but yes, if someone was to say they don't want the card, they are still going to have that fee.
Thanks.
All right, I don't see any other questions, so we will move to the motion. So thank you very much. And we have a motion from Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommends the City Council receive for information the Waste and Recycling Utility Curbside Organics Update Report, March 2023. And I don't want to have to repeat that. So Councillor Middleton Hope, that is your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think excitement might be a little bit over the top, but I'm certainly interested in how this rolls out and the feedback that we get from our citizens in regards to this new initiative. But I certainly applaud administration for the hard work and the consultation that they have been involved with for several months. Actually, I guess it goes back more than several months. It's probably more like several years in regards to how this is going to roll out. So certainly congratulations, I think, is in order to members of Waste, Recycling, and Environment. Did I get it close? Waste Utility. I forget the utility part all the time.
They kept changing their names, so I don't think there's any.
So if there are no other questions or comments, I'd certainly be glad to call the motion, Madam.
Question's been called. All in favor? Excellent. Mr. Rossi, you already anticipated that you are next on the agenda, continuing with our Waste and Recycling Utility 2022 Annual Report. So if you'd like to go ahead, please do.
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson and members of Civic Works Standing Policy Committee. I'm excited to be here today to present the Waste and Recycling Utility 2022 Annual Report. This presentation will provide some highlights of the department's accomplishments in 2022, and more detailed information can be found in the report in the agenda package. Next slide, please. So in 2022, the Waste and Recycling Utility, or now Waste Utility and Environment, continued to advance programs aimed at reducing landfill disposal and greenhouse gas emissions while delivering our existing services as we transitioned out of the COVID-19 pandemic. This was accomplished by the hard work and dedication of our staff and contract partners, working within four main areas: waste collections, led by James Nichols, who successfully rolled out the Phase 1 Curbside Organics program, as you just saw in his presentation today; sustainability, led by, in 2022 by Mandy Parker, who completed the Energy Conservation Master Plan, which aligns with the Municipal Development Plan and City Council's environment policy, setting a path to reduce the corporation's consumption of energy; education and outreach, led by Leslie Burke, developing outreach material for the department, including supporting the Curbside Organics Phase 1 and Phase 2 rollouts; and processing, waste processing, led by myself with the support of Tom Cannell and Mark Molsky, which delivered the landfill gas collection and control system and the new organics processing facility. Next slide, please. This slide shows a comparison of waste collection rates in Alberta. Currently, Lethbridge is at the lower end, but we are only delivering two-stream collection currently. In May of 2023, after the rollout of Curbside Organics, Lethbridge would be in the middle of this graph between Strathmore and Medicine Hat, just below Medicine Hat. Next slide, please. This figure shows that there were no rate increases for waste collection from 2012 to 2019. In 2019, with the introduction of curbside recycling, there was a $9 per month increase, and at that time there was also a $2 per month decrease as garbage collection services shifted from weekly to bi-weekly pickup. There was a small inflationary increase to garbage collection in 2020, and recycling rates have not increased since the program began. And I think, as Mr. Nichols noted, in 2023, there will be a $5 per month increase after the introduction of the new Curbside Organics collection program. Next slide, please. This chart shows how the charges within the utility bill are used to fund major programs and services offered by the department. And this was talked about in the last presentation, but of note, the 360-liter or 5-bag larger garbage cart costs about $1.71 a month more than the 240-liter 3-bag garbage cart. Next slide, please. The 2022 highlights for the waste collection area include completion of 1.5 million total collections. Curbside garbage was decreasing since 2019, and that trend continued in 2022. The Phase 1 curbside organics was rolled out successfully, and results showed 79% satisfaction from Phase 1 participants. Organics still makes a significant portion of the curbside garbage collected, but we expect that to decrease in the coming years. Next slide, please. So highlights for waste processing include the safe processing for nearly 140,000 tons of garbage, recyclables, and organics, with more than 20% of that being diverted from landfill. More than 95,000 hauls to the facility, and the MRF and new hydrovac facility enjoy broad support, attracting new customers and increasing tonnage. The new landfill gas collection system was successfully commissioned in August and has destroyed 5,255 tons of carbon dioxide equivalencies in the second half of 2022. We expect that to increase as we optimize and expand the facility in the future. And expansion has already begun with the first horizontal gas trench being added in 2022. Next slide, please. So highlights for the capital projects in 2022 at the Waste and Recycling Centre include the completion of the organics processing facility, which will support our ability to meet the 2030 waste diversion target by receiving organics from the residential green carts and the ICI, industrial, commercial, and institutional sector, or the business sector. Also, the transfer station was, Phase 1 modernization was undertaken, and increasing the facility's storage and processing areas. The second phase of that project will be delivered in 2023, enclosing the bale storage area and enhancing safety and operational efficiency. Next slide, please. The highlights for the education and outreach area in 2022 were the delivery, with support of corporate communications, the delivery of the education and outreach for the Phase 1 curbside organics collection, participating in the Love Food, Hate Waste national campaign as one of 2 Alberta municipalities leading that work. This involves connecting with residents about ways to reduce their food waste at numerous events like the Community Conversation, the Big Truck Petting Zoo, and farmers markets throughout the community. We also delivered school tours at the Blue Sky Educational Centre, which is located at our Waste and Recycling Centre. We undertook numerous surveys and engagements with the community, and the group managed the website, Waste Wizard search engine, and the collection reminders. Next slide, please. In 2022, the business waste diversion area, staff had numerous interactions with business organizations and stakeholders. We continue to see strong diversion from both the ICI, institutional, commercial, and industrial sector, and the construction and demolition sector. And in 2021, the targets for waste diversion from those 2 sectors were achieved on time. Next slide, please. This slide just shows some of the achievements in the sustainability area in 2022. And we're very proud of the work that was done on the Energy Conservation Master Plan implementation, corporate organics implementation, and reducing corporate greenhouse gas emissions. Ms. Parker will provide more information in the next presentation. Next slide, please. This slide shows where we started in 2015 with the approval of the waste diversion strategy and policy. Highlights of what we have achieved so far include the implementation of curbside recycling in 2019, ICI waste diversion from 2016 to present, the setting of greenhouse gas reduction targets in 2020, and the approval of the Energy Conservation Master Plan in 2022. It also shows what we will do to achieve our goals by 2030. Next slide, please. This table is an update of the table found in the waste diversion policy. It tracks the progress we're making decreasing waste disposal while increasing waste reduction. Of note, in 2021, the targets for C&D and ICI sectors were achieved, and the target for the residential sector will be achieved after the implementation of curbside organics, as was set out in the waste diversion strategy. The Waste Management Master Plan will be delivered later this year, which will inform updates to this plan and policy and ensure that we achieve the 2030 targets and beyond. Next slide, please. 2023 will be an exciting year for the waste, utility, and environment. Phase 2 of the curbside organics will be implemented next month. Phase 3, apartments and condos, will begin in the fall of 2023. The Waste Management Master Plan will be updated. Collection routes will be optimized, exceeding the targets set out in the KPMG recommendations. Capital projects, including quad scale and contaminated soils disposal cells, will be delivered. We will continue to implement carbon offset projects and the Energy Conservation Master Plan. Mandatory recycling and organics for the ICI and C&D sectors have begun. We will optimize the landfill gas capture, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, and we will continue to deliver great services and value for our customers. Next slide, please. Thank you for your attention, and I am happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. We'll first see if there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this. Is there anyone who, no? Okay, Ms. Shepherd, you had your chance. All right, so we'll move into questions, and we start with Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation. It's for me, it's always insightful and interesting. I'm not sure that it's exciting, but it is interesting. Does the website, or do we produce literature that is available to the public that informs them about the potential hazards that occur at our waste and recycling facility? I recently heard about some events in terms of paint cans getting into there and being used as going through the recycling process. My concerns were things like propane tanks, or the small little green propane tanks and so forth, getting into recycling, or even getting into an area where they can be compressed and create a potential explosion. So have we looked at a campaign where we can inform the public? Maybe this is a good time to do it with the rollout of the green bins, but provide us with some keener insights, or a location where we can go to identify specific items that we're putting into any of the 3 bins that maybe we shouldn't be?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. We actually, the education and outreach team, I mean, proper utilization of the black, blue, and the coming green card is a focus for them. And we work on that every day. So what we tend to do is produce information that shows residents what should go in those carts. And if there's an item that doesn't go in one of those carts, we'll have information that shows that it could go to our public drop-off area, or one of the toxic roundup events that we've recently held, and we're holding another one April 22nd of 2023. So we tend to provide those the correct information of what to do. If residents are confused or unsure, they can always visit our website, look at our literature, call 311, or use the Waste Wizard tool, which is available through our website, where you can just simply type in, if you're looking, what to do with a syringe, for instance, or a compressed gas, a propane canister. When you start to type that in, it'll actually auto-populate propane canister. You'll click on it, and it'll bring you up with safe disposal options, directing you out to the Waste and Recycling Center. But your question it is very exciting, actually.
I'm wondering, there was, and I believe it was Councillor Parker, because he seems to lead the initiatives on this, raised an issue a number of months ago in regards to the individual 3 sites that we have where we drop off our leaves and so on and so forth. And I believe he made a recommendation in terms of having the ability to be able to drop off other types of materials, like the paint cans or the propane tank, the little propane tanks or whatever. Are we working through that? Is that a likely outcome, or are we just simply in the process of continuing to move through it?
There was a presentation to the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee last year with some recommendations around whether we could expand the use of those sites, cite a new, I guess, eco-center type location, or the roundups. So at that time, that went over to council, and the decision was to trial roundups over the course of the coming year, which we're in the process of delivering. After those roundups are done, we'll bring back one more recommendations with the outcomes later this fall.
Good. I do recall some of those conversations. I don't want you to think I glazed over, because it is riveting, and I appreciate that.
Riveting and interesting. All right, Acting Mayor Parker. Oh,
I
sorry.
also-
Just a moment.
I think we're probably going to
Sanchez,
say the
did you
same.
wanna
I think we're going to
answer?
say the same thing. So,
Okay.
well, what I recall bringing the resolution forward right after official business motion, and I do remember our director of infrastructure told us that it's not as easy as just putting them on those sites. There's risk. There's these are flammable items and all that. So, you folks came back with a presentation, and we did our first one. I think was at City Hall, and from what I recall, it was backed up all the way down. It was so successful that it was backed up all the way down Stafford. It was oversubscribed, almost 800 people I heard. So, go ahead.
I'm just going to expand that. That's exactly right. The first one was completed in September, I believe, last year, and the next one is coming up within the next month. And the first one that we did, we were expecting people to come and participate, but not as much as they did. We were actually, by noon, we were almost sold out in the space with the company that we have. So at the sites, Steve, Mandy, and the team are working in terms of the next steps, but there might be options by having a contractor like the one that we use that is part of the program to collect all the materials, and they will be coming back, I believe is by the end of Q4 of this year with those recommendations.
So congratulations on the success of that one. So the next one is April. Where is that going to be?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
April 22nd at the MMAX Center parking lot. So backed by popular demand in a larger venue, and we're gonna. It was the first event was very successful, so we're optimistic.
We won't have to pay for parking.
But you won't be parking, you're just dropping stuff off.
I have no further questions.
Okay. Now, hear me out. I have an idea. When we get rid of those waste and recycling, the 3, we turn them into dog parks. I'm kidding. Please tell me more about the wind mitigation implementation for blue carts, because if there's anything that heats up my Twitter, it's windy days and blue carts.
Absolutely. So Mr. Nichols and his team undertook a pilot strategy where they implemented a couple of solutions, but primarily it's a rubber latch. It's specially designed for the type of cart we have, and we installed it in those highly windy areas. The purpose of the latch is to keep the recyclables, which are unbagged in a blue cart, from blowing out all around the community. So hopefully the cart will stay up in the wind.
Oh,
James
and
has...
you even have an example.
I can hand it around if you guys like. Yes? Oh, props to James.
Well, the others know you're going to have to bring props up too now.
So the outcome of the pilot was successful. The carts that had the latches installed, if they did tip over, they didn't spill litter. Also, our staff found that they were able to still empty the cart, which was one of the concerns we had, that the lid would hold even when proper dumping was happening, but we didn't find that to be a problem. So we've gone ahead and we're starting to roll that out to areas that are highly wind prone. So our administrative staff are selecting those areas. We're installing those latches currently. And in some special cases, we're also investigating other improvements like weighted basis and things like that. So trying to take a customized and specific approach to helping residents with the blue carts in the wind.
This is just me, but I'm thinking that's worthy of a news release, because you can't tell me how many people, like, I can't explain how many people get mad when those flip over. So it's a good news story. Is it?
I'll defer to the education outreach folks. I think it is a really good news story. We do want administration to select residents who can participate rather than have residents self-select. So a broadcast may
Maybe deferred till
May,
later.
may send a lot of calls to 311, right?
Can't they get paid well? All right. Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Just to, I guess in tandem with that comment, can others acquire the latches and not necessarily that they have them installed? So I think of my neighborhood, I have a number of people that are my age or older, and it does get windy, irrespective of whether anybody else tells us it does. We do get some wind down there in the canyon. At the end of the day, I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for us to either have latches because we're not part of the identified area, and or is there an opportunity to acquire latches and install them, because we've got some handy guys down there. Maybe they could install them as well. I'm sure there's a YouTube video that our young friend Mr. Nichols has probably made that could instruct even an old guy like me to use the screwdriver on our carts.
Well,
we'll think about.
I hate to burst your bubble, but our trained staff did have to trial. There was a learning in the installation process. So I hope we wouldn't encourage residents to install them themselves. However, I guess if you are in a problematic area, you certainly can call 311. And if enough people call, we will definitely look into it. If our drivers realize that that's an issue because they're also seeing it, we will look into it. And a number of areas that are experiencing wind are already there, and perhaps you guys are just, I'm not too sure if you're in the path coming or not in the neighborhood you're thinking of, but we aren't quite done the installation of all those latches yet.
So no opportunity for us to pick up latches on our own and do the installation, but there is an opportunity for neighborhoods to call into 311 and say, could we be considered as a windy place in Lethbridge?
Absolutely. If we've missed a neighborhood, we should hear from them.
It is a matter of perception, you realize that.
Acting Mayor Parker.
Thank you. And there's also personal responsibility as a homeowner. If we're going to have 140 kilometer winds, probably not best to put out your thing. If that was the case, would you folks come the next day, or would that just change scheduling and all that? So maybe there's just going to be some days, like once in a blue moon, there's going to be like 140 kilometer wind, and you know what? I guess my recycling just won't get taken out to this. What do you recommend there?
Yeah, that is a really tough situation. So if that does occur and your collection is just not able to occur because you chose to put your cart not out because you felt that was a sensible choice, we're hoping that you would do that and that you could make it to the next week. In many cases, 140 is pretty extreme, but in many cases, a full cart won't blow over, and it blows over after the material's out. So if you did put it out when it was very full and you didn't think you could make it to the next collection, I guess there are no guarantees, and that's a personal judgment, as you said, but your car may stay up until it's collected, and then it may blow over, and you might need to find it down the road or alley. But yes, that's completely right. In the event that you couldn't make it to the next collection, though, we would encourage people to use the recycling stations.
Very much.
Oh, Mr. Sanchez, that's what you were going to say?
Yeah, Steve just covered that last point. I was going to say that's one of the reasons why those stations are there, because it's an overflow, right? And they will remain in place. We might be doing an assessment later. Waste and Recycling is going to be looking at those and see what opportunities are there for those. But that's the overflow for recycling and other areas to be used, and that's why they were originally planned.
So my final question is, what type of recycling waste is causing the most problems? Because, I mean, right, with new technology, we're seeing lots of new types of waste coming down the stream.
Opportunities.
So which is your best opportunity then for recycling? Which are the ones that you wish you could do more with?
So the greatest opportunity to reduce waste to the landfill is organics, and it's coming next month. So we're really excited about that. Within the recycling stream, a challenge for us is plastics, it's containers. But it's not an insurmountable challenge. We have all of the right equipment and contractors and people in place. So, it has become an opportunity. Our recycling system is working exceptionally well, and the biggest challenge we have is when somebody, maybe by mistake or for whatever reason, puts something dangerous or inappropriate into the recycling cart, and it puts our staff or equipment or our haul trucks at risk.
So it's human error more than anything else. That's not an actual object. Okay, thank you very much. I think, Mr. Sanchez.
Just want to make a comment, and the team will be back later this year. On that question that you just asked, opportunities, there is legislation that has been passed at the provincial level that is called EPR. That's Extended Producer Responsibility, and that actually goes towards putting some of the responsibility back to the producer. So whatever they produce as a packaging material needs to be designed in a way that can be recycled. So that's something that passed, I believe, was at the end of last year, and is not going to be fully implemented until 2025. And that might have some implications for our programs and the way we deliver the services. But the team has been working on that for the last, I will say, 2 years, Steve, Mandy. So they will be coming back later, maybe this year, with an update to council on that legislation and what are the consequences or what things needs to be changed or will be changing as a result of that one.
Aren't we one of the last provinces to get that? So it's nice to actually see it come along. Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Just a follow-up question to Mr. Sanchez then. I take it any of this legislation, the legislation you're talking about is provincial, which we may have compatible legislation in other provinces. However, that doesn't address packaging from Southeast Asia, which would not necessarily fall under the same purview. So how are we going to manage that?
By local?
That's a really good question, because it depends. In some areas, I believe Ontario just did their review of the EPR. BC implemented EPR many years ago. They were looking into that option, that if you are selling anything within Canada, then it has to meet that criteria. But it's not as simple as it looks like, because many things comes from different areas. And Steve might have more information on that one.
Some aspects of the legislation are a little bit more clear than others, and in regard to that, the legislation has attempted to address that concern. So the producer is going to be the manufacturer if they're within the province of Alberta or Canada, or the importer or the retailer. So at some point within the value chain of an item of packaging or printed paper, which is what's to be captured within the EPR regulation, there will be a body and a designated administrative organization that will try to administer and ensure that those organizations within certain thresholds participate in the program, both funding and delivering it. So the legislation looks at that. I'm not sure if it's totally locked up perfectly, but they definitely saw what you're mentioning.
It's been addressed. It may become an enforcement issue, but at least it's been addressed.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. I don't see any more questions, Mr. Rousey, so if you want to have a seat, we'll move on to the motion.
Thank you for an exciting afternoon.
I have a motion from Councillor Palladino. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommends that Council receive for information the Waste and Recycling Utility 2022 Annual Report. Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Rosie, for your annual report and presentation. I learned that there is your department is waste processing, waste collection, waste processing, education and outreach, and sustainability, which I think we're going to hear more about in the next presentation. So if there are no further comments or questions, I would call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? We accepted more information. Perfect. Ms. Parker, yes, General Manager of Waste, Utility and Environment on the Sustainability 2022 Annual Report. Floor is yours.
Thank you. You get a triple whammy today.
Learning a lot about waste today.
So my name is Mandy Parker, the General Manager with the Waste, Utility and Environment Department. Today I'd like to present to you the 2022 Annual Report for the Sustainability of the City. First off, I'd like to acknowledge Rain Barber. Rain prepared the report and she collected all of the information from the various departments. And I'd also like to thank the various departments for all of their information and participating in this with us. Next slide, please. Just a roadmap of our presentation. I'm going to talk about the alignment, the 2022 highlights, and then what we've been working on now next, and what's in the incubator for later. Next slide, please. So the main alignments are the environment policy and the municipal development plan. The environment policy provides us with a mandate to minimize Lethbridge's ecological footprint and our efficient use of natural resources. The MDP has wonderful opportunities with the policies to deliver on sustainable initiatives and has an environmentally responsible city as the outcome. There are a few other alignments, such as the Energy Conservation Master Plan, the Partners for Climate Protection, and that's the GHG emission reduction target, as well as our business plan. Next slide, please. So a couple of the highlights would be our corporate energy use. The electricity and natural gas consumption for the corporation is up, and our fuel consumption is down. Now, there's a few reasons for this. In 2018, when we did our baseline, we've added a few new facilities. We've added the Phase 2 Crossings Leisure Center, the Material Recovery Facility at the Waste and Recycling Center, the airport and associated facilities out there, Fire Hall number 5, and the Nikayuko Bunka building. Next, in January, November, and December of 2022, it was relatively cold. I believe we hit a few minus 40-degree days during that time. And this increases our natural gas usage. The hot summer that we experienced in 2022 had an increase in use of air conditionings, fans, and thus our electrical consumption went up. Now, the decrease in our fuel consumption is due to newer, fuel-efficient vehicles, the preventative maintenance that the Fleet Services has been providing, idling reductions, but it's mainly been the removal of the school bus fleet from the transit fleet. Next slide, please. This slide is the Partners for Climate Protection, or the PCP. We do reference it often. And this is the target to reduce our GHG emissions by 40% of the 2018 baseline by 2030. We've reduced the GHGs by 2.2% to date. And you can see on the graph the impact of the COVID shutdown for 2020 and 2021. We're hoping that 2023 will be a more normal year in terms of consumption and reduction. Now, the reductions are evident that the province has been moving towards natural gas fired power plants instead of the coal-fired power plants. The 17 facilities that we've audited, they've been undergoing building retrofits, as well as the landfill gas collection system that Steve talked about. We've commissioned that, and we've been destroying methane. And lastly, greenhouse gas emissions from fleet are down, again, mainly due to the reduction in consumption as mentioned in the previous slide. Next slide, please. Further detailing activity, that's the one. Further detailing the activities mentioned in the last slide, the landfill gas collection system has destroyed 5,255 tons of CO2 equivalent since August 2022. And that reduction of GHGs from the landfill will be the biggest impact on our target. Fleet's greenhouse gas emissions were reduced by 15%, and as mentioned 2 slides ago, this is due to fuel efficiency, preventative maintenance, reduced idling, and the elimination of the school buses from our fleet. We do have an eco driver training program and an anti-idle campaign that are scheduled for 2023. And then for the 17 buildings that were audited, the energy consumption and the water consumption have decreased for those facilities. And this can be attributed to the energy retrofits that have been completed. The COVID shutdown played a big role in having the ice arenas and the pools drained. And there's less people in the office spaces during that time. But 2023, again, will give us a more true snapshot of our energy usage. Next slide, please. With a mandatory recycling and mandatory organics program launched for the non-residential members of our community, we participated in that program as well. January, we launched the centralized waste collection, and we added 45 new city facilities to the organics program. Next slide, please. So what are we currently working on? We're working on the energy efficiency policy, an energy conservation master plan implementation, the solar carport, which is slated for construction this summer. We've got some EV charging stations, and that's the electrical vehicle charging stations. We do have some in the city parking lot right now that you'll see. They are not connected. They're set up, just the ground's frozen, so we can't get the conduit in the ground to connect them until after the frost is out of the ground. The toxic roundup, which we're having on Earth Day, April 22nd at the NMAX. Circular cities, love food, hate waste, and carbon offset projects. Next slide, please. Next on the plan would be the climate adaptation and action plan, and that would be for the whole community, not just the corporation. We're looking at the Partners for Climate Protection corporate milestone 3. So that's taking the 40% reduction that we have and planning it all out. We did have the 20% planned when it was approved, but we still need to come up with the other 20%. And once we submit that to the PCP, we'll get milestone 3 completed. We want to do the Partners for Climate Protection community milestone 2, which is setting a reduction target for the community. So we'll hopefully get that underway shortly. Sustainability baseline recommendations, the Environment Construction Operations Plan Framework, an energy strategy, and recovery heat from exhaust. Next slide, please. And for later, some of the seeds that have been planted, the energy demand management, ecosystem services, and an environmental master plan. Next slide, please. And thank you for your time. I'll open it to any questions.
Thank you very much. And we do have some questions popping up. Again, I don't think there's any members of the public, so we will move directly to questions. Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you. You made reference, Ms. Parker, to circular cities. I'm not familiar with that.
Circular cities, that's it's the program that we're running under it right now is the Love Food, Hate Waste campaign. We had the Recycle Council of Alberta create a roadmap for circular cities. And it's basically so you have no waste. You take your products that you consume and you would repurpose them or recycle them and they would never actually need to be disposed of. So repair cafes would be one of them, or a tool library where you could just borrow something and everybody could share and use it. There's so many different things in the roadmap that would be part of circular cities. So they did a roadmap for us, and the two that we're currently working on was the Love Food, Hate Waste campaign and circular procurement. That one's kind of on pause right now, but we're focusing on the Love Food, Hate Waste.
Learning more about it.
Types of cities, aren't there? Councillor Palladino.
Thank you, Mandy. First of all, how do you put up with this? I know what an EV charging station is now. I know what a circular city is. But what's a solar carport?
It's a carport that has solar panels on the roof of it. A lot of times you can't put them on the building, on the roof, without doing a structural assessment. So we thought, let's do a pilot. Let's do a carport so there'll be some shade. We'll put some solar panels on it. We'll connect it to City Hall, and we'll see how it really, truly functions.
Not for the city manager's car, is it?
No. It's actually going to be in the LSCO parking lot.
For me to have it, I'd have to put it on my carport, right? Or is this an experiment?
It is a pilot.
All right, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Great. Landfill gas you said that's one of our greatest benefits right now, taking a lot of carbon out. How's that working? How does that actually work?
We've got a bunch of wells in the landfill, in the waste, and as the organics degrade, it's collected in the wells, and it's sent into a ring main, which pushes it around to the gas plant. And in the gas plant, it'll go through a flare, and it'll actually burn off the methane.
Okay, so we're still putting something into the environment, but much less than the carbon that we would have had prior.
Absolutely. Methane has a factor of, it's either 25 or 28. They keep changing the number, depends on what protocol you use. But you multiply any methane concentration by 25, and then that's the carbon equivalent. So it's 4 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So destroying that is...
Some carbon, removing some carbon. You have a lot of plans, like, I mean, that's, you're working on or moving towards a lot of plans. Are they done internally, or are they done by outside contractors? How do you get most of those plans done?
Most of them are contracted out.
So it's not affecting your workforce, you still have the workforce to get the other items done?
Absolutely, and we're able to leverage some grant funding for some of those.
And Ms. Shepherd is still sitting here. When you're working on those plans, how do you guys work with Environment Lethbridge?
Well, for the new one that we have up and coming, the climate adaptation plan, she's part of the team.
Oh, there's a good partnership between that, you guys are getting the information and
Yep, working together.
work with the community. Perfect. All right, I don't see any other questions in here. Oh, one other thing. You talked about tool libraries. I know there's repair cafes and stuff like that. How's the legislation on that? Because I know that's been one of the biggest issues that I've been hearing, is that there's certain companies that don't actually let you repair their appliances. They want you to throw it away, bring it in. Has there been any change in the legislation? Is that actually possible to do now?
I have not heard of any legislation, and I haven't heard of anybody not participating or not allowing people to participate in that. But it's been working well in the community for people to have those repair cafes.
Won't bring up the legislation. Because I know there are some companies that have made it very hard to fix their stuff because they want to either do it themselves or they want you to throw it out and buy new.
It might be depending on what type of items
Yeah,
you would take to the repair cafe.
very much could be. All right, well, thank you very much. We'll move then to the motion.
Just one last comment on the tool libraries. Please don't tell my sons about it because they come down to my house and apparently it is the tool library for them.
As long as you get it returned.
Okay.
Do you have checkout cards? You can buy them at places like, Analog Books for books. You could just have your sons check the book. What? All right. Thank you, Ms. Parker. We'll move on to the motion. I have a motion from Councillor Palladino. Be it resolved, the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council receive for information the Sustainability 2022 Annual Report as provided in Attachment 1. Councillor Palladino.
Thank you. So I learned this initiative is supported within the waste and recycling utility. Its focus is on 6 key areas, which are sustainability, energy, air, land, water, and waste, and how the city is committed to being a leader in this area. So I thank you, Ms. Parker, again, and if there are no further comments or questions,
Please else in the queue.
call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Excellent. Now that entire side of the building is done, pretty much. And we move now to electric. Jason Durant, General Manager of Electric Utility, on the 2022 Annual Report. Oh yeah, we should probably give that back and not steal that for Councillor Middleton Hope.
Oh, yes.
It's electrifying.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and member of Civic Works SPC. I was going to apologize. Following Steve, I've got nothing for you. I've got nothing to hand around. I got nothing exciting here. But in all reality, next slide, please. 2022 year in review. It was a good year. Part of the, as I've always said, my main job, one of my primary jobs, is to stay out of the news. Make sure the electric utility doesn't get in the news either due to rates or failures, anything like that. So it was a very successful year. It was a year of growth. We had growth not only in demand, but growth in our system. We did some major modifications throughout the system, and everything was very successful. So with that, I'd like to thank all the electric staff, everyone who provided input not only into this report, but into the building and maintaining of the structure and facilities of the electric system, plus the members who are still here. I thank them because without them it'd be really quiet in here, so thanks for staying. Also, 2022 was a different year. We had supply chain issues. I'm sure you've heard about them. For electric specifically, it changed how we maintained and upgraded our system. The beginning of the year, we weren't sure how much new equipment we were going to be able to get our hands on. So it changed our model. Instead of replacing things as we needed, 2022, we actually deferred some of that maintenance and kept a hold of it just because the spares that we had in supply, we didn't know if we'd need those in case of an emergency. So we are undergoing all those changes now because supply is getting back to normal, It's not there yet, but we are able to secure new assets as we go through the year. Last year, a 4-year operating budget was approved. As everybody here knows, we did that with no changes in staffing levels, and we had minimal rate increases, which was a big success. Through efficiencies and cost-cutting measures, we were able to keep the portion that the city and the electric utility is able to control down to 1%. So I show that as a very successful year. Next slide, please. This is the slide that I always bring up every time I go to do a presentation, because really this is a reminder of what the electric utility does. So the electric utility has two primary functions, transmission and distribution. The transmission system in the red circle there is regulated by the AUC, the Alberta Utility Commission, and that is a provincial regulator. That's why it's color-coded red. So while City Council has purview over the transmission side, the actual funding and approvals get done by the province. On the other side, the bigger circle is the distribution system. That's the green circle. It's where everybody around this, within City Council, has regulatory oversight. We can make decisions, we can make approvals, we can deny approval or deny decision, like we can deny things and do what's best for the city in that area. And then there's a small circle there, the RRO. That's been in the news a little bit over the last couple of weeks, specifically around some of the changes that are that resulted at the end of March due to the provincial requirements or the provincial cap that was placed on the RRO over the last couple months. That's now come off, and we're now back to a floating market, plus the deferral account now has to be paid. So that's why that was in the news. That's going to be interesting in the next year. It's one thing I didn't add into my comments because at the time of preparing this, it wasn't public, but the RRO program is up for review right now by the province. They're looking at different options and different scenarios of ways to improve or make it more economical for everybody. And then you see in between the transmission and distribution, all of our support services, operations, fiber group, all those business units within electric that do functions for both. Next slide, please. Expenditures. So if you look over the last couple of years, expenditures have gone up. Primarily, this is due to a couple things, the growth of the distribution system, cost of electricity. The energy markets are going up, which increases costs for the electric utility. The provincial transmission fees have gone up. Again, those all get shown in or reflected within our expenditures, even though they're just a pass-through. So overall expenditures are up slightly. And then on the circle chart, you can see the breakdown between distribution, transmission, the RRO project, as well as a very small slice of the pie, which is taken up by fiber. Next slide, please. Rate comparisons. This is something you'll probably see more and more of, comparisons, because we hear about it, we get inquiries about this. Where does the city of Lethbridge fit in with other utilities? You'll see here, the other utilities are not color-coded, or they're, sorry, not identified as to which utilities are, but these are, in no specific order, NMAX, EPCOR, and Red Deer that we're comparing to. So you see in the residential rate, yes, City of Lethbridge is on the higher end of what a monthly bill would look like, but when you go into the commercial and the industrial, you would say we're on the lower or the middle of the graph. So we're kind of in a good spot depending on where you sit, what your perspective is. Next question. Oh, maybe I'll clarify too why I did not identify utilities here. Utilities don't like to compare to other utilities publicly. There's, you'll see they don't like to call each other out. It's a little bit of a, it's not, I don't want to say it's secretive because it's not, but we'll compare in areas similar to this. You'll see later on reliability stats. When we get presented reliability stats from the Canadian Electric Association, or Electricity Canada as it's called now, we only find out what we are compared to everybody else. There is no identification as to who everybody else is. So I've kept it generic for now, but if further questions, we can sit down and talk about that at a later time. Next slide, please. Again, now here's our reliability and outage information. So we are leading the way. The City of Lethbridge Electric Utility is leading the way, not only here in Alberta, but across Canada. You can see our reliability stats there, the blue bars being the City of Lethbridge versus the gold, which is Canada-wide. I've got 2020 and 2021 reliability stats there. There's a note within the annual report that 2022 numbers weren't available yet. I now have those, and I can verify that 2022 was actually better than the previous 2 years. So we have made some improvements there. Outages by cause, we track that. That goes into our outage reporting and our reliability stats. But primarily, the major causes of outages are planned outages. We'll take a planned outage in order to safely repair and maintain equipment. But other causes are things like construction, wildlife, failure. Those are primarily our number 1, number 2, 3, 4, our top causes of outages in the City of Lethbridge. So they have reduced slightly in 2022 compared to 2021, and most of that's due to construction and weather-related causes. Next slide, please. 2022 projects, as I mentioned, it was a year of growth. We have done a lot of work on the transmission side at the substations. At 146, we replaced some primary circuit breakers, as well as one power transformer at 146. The other one is being replaced right now. Again, that was due to supply chain issues, which is the reason for the deferral. Both were scheduled for last year. It just caused us to slide things back a little bit. On the distribution side, we had a number of major projects last year, all around flexibility. So we added a new tie line between South Lethbridge and North Lethbridge up along 43rd Street. That provides us with more flexibility to transmit or distribute load to different substations and give us more operational flexibility within the system. Same thing under the river. We completed a river crossing. Prior to last year, we had feeders, we had tie lines that were on the Crow's Nest Trail Bridge flowing through there. So we wanted to get out of that, knowing that they are going to be doing something with that bridge at some point in the future. So we proactively got off that bridge, created a river crossing, and now we have our own crossing there. So again, that's all around flexibility, being able to move load from west to south or north or wherever. Next slide, please. 311 summary. Most of our calls, a majority of our calls are usually outage related because our outages usually, when we have a large outage, it impacts thousands of people, not just 10, 20, or 30, and that's when 311 gets the majority of the calls. Information requests, we get information requests into the control room. We get requests directly into electric around things like permits and demolition permits, things like that, and metering requests. Service requests, we get a lot of service requests for damaged equipment. If customers want to disconnect and reconnect, they're doing work on their home or on their service, they'll put a call into us to shut off the power so they can do their work safely and then reconnect it later on. Trees, some feedback, and then power problems. If we don't have a system-wide outage, but individual residences or customers have issues, they'll call us and we'll send people out to go and investigate. Next slide, please. Year ahead. So cost of service review. So the cost of service model is how we determine what our rates are for different classes. We do this every couple of years to reflect or to reassure, to reaffirm, I guess, that all the rate classes are paying their share. And that's what we do every couple of years. So we're going to do that this year. So that's where you see residential, commercial, industrial, all those different rate classes. We'll review those to make sure that they are paying their fair share on the equipment and not being burdened or cross-subsidized by other groups. We're going to do that this year. We're also looking at another river crossing. We have feeder ties that run through the Hoop Up Drive Bridge right now. Those are actually physically degrading right now. We've gone in and done an inspection because of all the vibration that happens throughout that bridge. Those cables are degrading, so we're looking at another option of getting under the river and providing a different path to tie west to south left bridge. And then lastly, we're going to continue working closely with new businesses as they come along, new customers and generators. We have our first large-scale solar farm that's coming. They've already started. We've been working with them for some time now. It's looking like 2024 they will go into service, but we are seeing more and more of those, and as they come along, we're working with them to ensure that A, they get the answers they need, and if they do decide to come, they'll have that connection ready for them when they're ready. So I think that's it for my presentation. Again, sorry, it's not very electrifying or shocking or anything, but that's a good thing. So I leave that now for any questions.
Well, considering how many, tools are actually plugged in up here, you're kind of necessary even for our work, so I think it is electrifying.
It is, but we are, admittedly so, this is one area I don't mind being boring in. We're good being boring.
Don't want the news. All right, Acting Mayor Parker, first question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Drenth, for your presentation. I want to thank all the work that you and your department do, and I want to thank Mr. Perkins. Stu was used to do that job, and he did an excellent job, and so it was always good news stories when you came to us. Sometimes, like you said, no news is good news, and I remember as a kid growing up in the city, it was like, when there's a big snowfall, the power always went out, and we were like, yes, because that means we all got to go home. But I never hear my kids call me up saying the power goes out. So obviously, our infrastructure is getting more and more sophisticated over the time. Regarding the regulated rate option,
Yes.
that was big on the news, and that's, for example, just so I want to have a good understanding. So when someone doesn't sign up with an EPCOR or an MMAX, they get the regulated rate option, the default option. And from what we were told, there was a huge surge, and the province kind of ate that cost, saying that, well, those people on the regulated rate option are going to have to pay that back over the time coming. Are you seeing a lot of people phoning your department or phoning the city of Lupper saying, I want to get off the RO, I see this coming down the pipes, I've read the news?
Well, that's a good question. I actually asked that very question this morning, and I don't have an answer yet. I'm still waiting to get the results of that. But I can say that, yes, so the RO is the option of default if you don't provide or don't select a retailer. And the cap at 13.5 cents was part of the government's affordability action plan. It came to end on March 31st, and that difference between what the actual cap was and the cost of electricity went into a deferral account, and now that has to be recovered through the RO. You are correct in that people can jump off. We haven't heard that yet. We did get some indication from 311 that people have been calling in, but the numbers I don't know yet. So I'll get those numbers and be able to provide those at a later time. I just don't have those yet.
My second question, what is the biggest issue that keeps you up at night in regards to your utility? Like, I am really concerned about the next 6 months. Is there anything that you see,
Well, to be honest, it really isn't a 6-month thing. It's about safety. My biggest fear is the safety of the employees. Yes, we take all measurable steps. We do everything possible to make sure our employees are safe, but that is the one thing that always has, and maybe it's just me personally, that keeps me up at night, is making sure that everybody goes home at the end of the day. Now, as far as if you're looking at, what does the future look like, things that keep me up there, not necessarily electric vehicles, but it's just the electrification of the system and where are we going to go. I believe we have the tools and equipment in place to make sure we're able to respond and react and proactively do things, which we've already done. We are set up well, but it's just the unknown. New provincial elections coming up, that always changes the electric industry. Always changes direction. Policy comes up depending on which government's in place, and it kind of drives us. So that's always our, around this time of the cycle, our biggest fear is what's coming. the unknown.
Thank you, Mr. Druce, for all the work that you and your team. I know you guys do a lot of work behind the scenes, and they're out there on the streets on a daily basis, and so no news is good news. So thank you very much.
Great.
Deputy Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I guess, a comment and a question. So I've lived here for 20 years, and I can tell you that I probably haven't had more than 1 hour during those 20 years where we've had a power outage. And I reflect on this, that my 96-year-old mother is living in Montreal, and they are in day 2 of yet another outage. So congratulations to our electric system for the hard work that you do in providing a very necessary resource. I noticed, and you did speak to this, but I'd like to just reinforce my interest in this area when you spoke about residential rates are higher, although commercial and industrial rates seem to be lower when compared to other mid-sized cities. You are conducting a review this year. Is there any hope or possibility that rates for individual consumers might come more in line with what might be found in other cities?
So the answer is yes. We will perform our review cost of service model and see what that looks like. But it all comes down, at the end of the day, it comes down to the regulator, which is City Council. And if they deem, City Council determines that they would like to see a reduction in residential rates, the other rates are going to increase to cover those costs. So it's all, right now we do it on basically a user pay. The user pays their proportionate share, and we just keep it at that. However, there are other ways of doing it. It's just more of a regulator type decision to bring that forward.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation.
Sanchez would like to add a little more to that.
Yes, and I will probably have Jason to explain all the details, but another comment that I want to make is if we tie a little bit between level of service and reliability of the utility, that's another factor that plays into the equation. The fact that we are one of the most reliable means that the level of service that we have is higher too, that you might not see that in other communities and other places, and there is a price for that. That's part of the service delivery and the model that we have, and Jason can explain that also.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. That is correct. So if you look at some of the other utilities, they are not as reliable. We would have to do a cost comparison to get to the, what level of service do you want for what dollars? But yes, definitely. If we want to change the service levels, we can do that with a reduction in rates, but also there's other consequences that come out of that, like reduction in reliability.
Councillor Palladino.
Thank you. Kind of a personal question for me. My NMAX bill, periodically I'll get one, I don't think it's every month, but every quarter, I'll get one that has a bar chart on it that says, my house seems to be consuming more energy and gas than my neighboring properties. And yet I've been there 35 years, and during those 35 years, I've improved the house, more insulation, better windows, and my neighbors haven't yet. And I can't believe that, I'm a bigger consumer. Are they authentic, or is that a scam of some type?
Honestly, I can't speak to that because I don't know where NMAX gets their information from. You'd have to actually go and ask NMAX Energy or Services that question. They're a retailer. As a wire service provider, we're not allowed to get into that retailing world. We're not allowed to comment on that. We're not even allowed to provide some direction. What do you think about electricity rates? Where should I go? All I can do is direct people to the Utility Consumer Advocate. Their website has lots of information, and potentially maybe that's where you find some of the information you need to is on the UCA.
Ask them where they're getting the data from.
Yeah.
Or if it's just printed on the sheet like a watermark or something.
Are you sure your neighbor's not actually hooking into your electricity?
Yeah. My granny flat in the back.
Unlike Councillor Middleton Hope, who doesn't have a lot of problems, I live in an area where we still have above ground electrical lines and we still have a lot of big trees.
Yes.
What percentage of our utility now is underground?
We are currently about 80% underground, 20% overhead.
So it's basically the south and the north, there's a few pockets.
Yeah, the industrial area, some of the south and some of the north. I live in an overhead area as well, yes.
One tree goes down, it's, yeah.
Yeah, but we do have a 3-year vegetation management program. We hire a contractor, and every 3 years they'll go through the areas, trim all the trees, prune everything to make sure that we do minimize the number of outages caused by tree branches and down trees.
Is the plan to move them more underground or to wait till there's other utility work being done in that area? What's the plan with that 20% that's still?
We're not planning on going back and retrofitting the 20% because the overhead system does work. It has benefits as well. One of them being it is cheaper. It's easier to locate problems. So oftentimes the response can be quicker because like for instance, if it's the tree down, well, it's very obvious where that is. So no, at this point we have no intention of going back and undergrounding that 20%. The costs would be enormous, yes, to do so. So anything new, residential is all underground, but going back, we leave everything the way it is right now, unless there's a request. Consumers can request that those systems be put underground, but there's a cost to that. The cost is put on the person making the request so that, for instance, everyone around this table doesn't have to pay for someone to have their line put underground.
So for example, if some community wanted to pave their alley, they could at the same time ask for underground utilities.
Yep, correct.
So that's a possibility for the community. Okay, good to know. Thank you very much. I don't think I have any other questions in the queue, so we'll move to the motion. And I have a motion by Acting Mayor Parker. Be it resolved, the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee that recommend that council receive for information the Electric Utility 2022 Annual Report. Acting Mayor Parker.
I just want to thank you, Mr. Ruth, for your presentation, and just to reiterate, thank you to all your staff for the work you've done to date, and Mr. Perkins as well. Thank you for the years previous to that and continuing to make sure that our community is in good hands. So thank you very much, and I call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Perfect. That brings us to the end of the 7 presentations and to adjournment. So whether you have Passover, Easter, or another event this week, yeah, everybody enjoy their long weekend, and we'll see you all back here beginning of May for Civic Works. Thank you again, Mr. Westerson, and we are done.